Greetings fellow gamers, I'm the Soulsborne Seeker and today I'll be reviewing Grime 2, a Metroidvania Souls-like game developed by Cloverbyte and released on the 31st of March 2026 for PC, PS5, as well as the Xbox Series X and Series S. This is the highly anticipated sequel to Grime, a title that came out back in 2021 and quickly became a fan favorite in the Soulsvania scene, meaning that expectations for Grime 2 are quite high. So with that being said, does the sequel manage to live up to its predecessor by delivering an exceptional experience? Let's find out. Grime 2 transpires in a darkly inventive world comprised of massive hands, ancient ruins, and living color, a place whose environment, inhabitants, and cultures are as unique and diverse as the sprawling imagination of the mysterious entities that crafted it. You play as the Formless, a newborn enigmatic creature with a singular purpose gnawing at its consciousness. Consume. Driven by its instinctive need for sustenance, the Formless embarks on a treacherous journey across this surreal realm, in the process discovering increasingly disturbing information not only about the setting's origin, but also its very own nature. The game's narrative is incredibly poignant, nuanced, and moving, touching upon themes of artistic integrity, creativity, censorship, obsession, and the feeling of nothing ever being enough, with these topics being explored through interactions with the world's numerous residents, as well as observation of the environments themselves, since each biome structure reflects a different aspect of the artistic spectrum to the point where, at times, it comes off as a demented amalgamation that feels both disturbing and outlandish, but also familiar and comforting at the same time, effectively emulating the chaotic nature of an unbridled creative mind. This tumultuous vision of the world is further enhanced by the title's fantastic musical score, whose soundscapes do wonders in accompanying the various places that you will visit by adding an extra layer of thematic nuance to the mix. Speaking of places you'll traverse, as mentioned previously, the world of Grime 2 is, beyond the shadow of a doubt, one of the most impressively creative settings I've ever had the pleasure of exploring. Each area is a visual marvel of grotesque appendages, odd architecture, and eldritch colors, with the environmental detail present not only adding to the rich tapestry that is the game's world, but also providing insight into the elusive beings behind its conception. I honestly cannot overstate how magnificent the title's world building is, with every biome being tied to the realm's deep lore in masterful fashion, which, in turn, makes every nook and cranny a potential piece of the puzzle that is this place's history. Now, the setting is not only beautiful to look at, but also incredibly fun to explore, given that the map is completely packed with secrets for you to find and obtain, all of which are quite useful, making it worthwhile to venture off the beaten path. The collectibles at play here are divided into 10 categories, namely equipment pieces, force and breath upgrades, blood roots, hair strands, molds, breath crowns, pigments, miscellaneous items, and finally, atrium. Equipment pieces refer to the numerous weapons and armor you will find, upon which I will expand in the combat section. Force upgrades lengthen your force bar, which enhances your weapon damage when above a threshold, depletes when attacking or dashing, and regenerates passively. Breath upgrades increase the number of breath charges available, which you consume in order to heal yourself and replenish either by resting at save points or killing enemies. Blood roots are used in order to upgrade your weapons, and hair strands do the same for your armor pieces, with both of these materials being quite tricky to detect at times since they tend to hide in the background, so keep your eyes peeled. Molds are one of your most prominent battle arsenals and can be used in order to perform special attacks and imbue yourself with buffs, so more on them in the combat segment. Breath crowns provide certain benefits when equipped, such as healing faster or trading health regeneration for increased damage. Pigments are collected by hunting down and destroying certain enemies, and then used in order to procure passive abilities from a skill tree. Miscellaneous items mostly refer to quest objects that are related to the completion of tasks provided by characters you'll meet, as well as a few consumables. Finally, atrium is the game's main currency and is utilized in order to make purchases from the various merchants populating the setting. Given the significant number of collectibles on offer here, it is a good thing that the game's map overview is very helpful, though not perfect. From a logistical standpoint, the overview does a fantastic job of accurately portraying the world's structural details, making it incredibly easy to orient yourself, which is a good thing since the setting is massive. It also automatically marks down your location, save points, quest givers, merchants, main objectives, as well as the last place you perished. Finally, it offers you a total of 100 manual markers to place wherever you want, so make sure you start doing that immediately because, on the downside, I couldn't find a way for collectibles collectibles to get automatically marked on the map, which can be quite problematic if you're trying to go for 100% completion, since even though you have the manual markers, it can be easy to overlook things from time to time and thus not mark them. Thankfully, the fog of war is completely on point, so you can quickly spot places you have not visited. Moving across the map is made simple by the inclusion of a nice fast travel system that allows you to quickly warp between save points, also known as surrogates. The caveat here is that before you're able to use the fast travel system of each biome, you first need to find and unlock 2 seals, the first of which reveals the map, while the second opens up the warping mechanic. Finding said seals is not that hard since there are visual cues pointing you in the right direction, so I never had a problem with them. Moving on to platforming, I've got to say I had zero expectations of any meaningful acrobatic gauntlets here, since the first couple of hours of the game were completely combat focused, which was what I pretty much expected from it. That being said, Grime 2 proceeded to completely destroy any such expectations I had by throwing progressively harder platforming challenges at me, starting with some simple warm-up sections before going completely insane with many of the latter trials. I had an absolute blast conquering every single gauntlet I came across, with all of them being a pleasure to overcome, some frustratingly so, courtesy of the numerous traversal abilities you end up acquiring, which completely open up movement in a way that makes you feel like a master ninja. One complaint about this aspect of the game has to do with a couple of instances where I felt like the hitboxes of some spikes were a bit off. It only happened twice and was related to a very specific hazard that had me dashing through a breakable shard while trying to avoid some thorns at its fringes, with the hits I received there feeling somewhat inconsistent, though I did eventually figure out a way to consistently avoid them. My second and last issue here is related to a traversal ability that allows you to slide across vertical surfaces and ceilings, and is connected to the process of sliding down walls, which I found to be somewhat awkward to perform since it requires dashing against said walls while at the same time directing yourself downward, a combination whose exact timing I sometimes missed, though I did get progressively better at it. Combat-wise, if you know Grime, you know this is where the meat of the subject lies, and it is my absolute pleasure to say that the game's battle systems are incredibly fun and do its Souls-like inspirations justice. For starters, Grime 2 allows you to engage with enemies in both melee as well as ranged fashion, featuring a variety of armaments for you to obliterate your foes with. The game boasts more than 30 weapons that make up your battle repertoire, ranging from swords, axes, and maces all the way to throwing daggers and bows, with each arm's damage efficiency being connected to a diverse number of your overall 5 attributes, usually between 2 to 4 of them. Destroying enemies yields experience that leads to leveling up, which in turn provides ability points that you can then spend at a save location in order to increase your stats and scale the destructive power of the relevant weapons. Allocated statistics can be reset by the use of a certain item, so don't be afraid to experiment in order to find the combat approach that suits you best. Weapon efficiency is further boosted by your force power, which takes the form of a green bar that adds damage to them when above a certain point. Said bar depletes if you perform an attack or dash before gradually replenishing on its own, meaning you'll have to manage it during fights if you want to get the most out of your arsenal. Your character upgrades also include the aforementioned pigments, which you can spend in order to acquire passive abilities that make you even deadlier in combat, such as the opportunity to hurt an enemy when performing a perfect dodge. The battles themselves are deliberate and tactical, with each enemy plaguing the setting having a wealth of deadly but appropriately telegraphed attacks, effectively rewarding keen observation as well as snappy reflexes while never feeling unfair. Said enemies are also where the aforementioned molds come into play, which constitute one of the game's most notable systems. More specifically, certain adversaries can be briefly stunned and then hit with a dash attack in order to steal their mold, which is an equipable ability that can be used at the cost of paint, the title's equivalent to mana, in order to perform a special attack based on each specific foe the mold came from. There are also some non-enemy molds that you can find across the world, which contain both offensive as well as defensive capabilities. You can have a total of 3 persistent molds equipped at any given moment, and will need to gather a certain number of each mold type in order to make them permanent. Otherwise, they are consumed after a few uses and replenish at save points. Your defensive maneuvers correspond to a parry system, which I rarely used, though it at times kind of felt unavoidable, as well as a dash dodge, which I loved and used all the time, especially after I upgraded it to cause damage. You also get a wealth of armor sets, each one comprised of 3 pieces, namely torso, leggings, and gauntlets, with every set providing specific benefits as well as bonuses to one or more of your attributes. Weapons and armor can be upgraded at a blacksmith at the cost of atrium in combination with bloodroots and hair strands respectively. Healing is carried out via the use of breath charges, which you recharge either by defeating enemies or resting at a surrogate. As for death, it is not only incredibly lenient, but also rewarding to a degree. In essence, dying doesn't result in any kind of loss, neither of currency nor equipment, just a few mildly annoying runbacks here and there if you happened to die far away from a save point. Aside from that, the enemy that managed to take you down is now marked on the map for vengeance. What that means is, if you come across that foe again and manage to perform a very specific counter, you smash your previous death out of them in the form of a levitating replica of yourself, and if you absorb that, it heals a good chunk of your health. This was actually incredibly helpful when it came to the game's biggest and most punishing challenges, which, you guessed it, were its dementedly brutal bosses. I honestly cannot fully express how fun and exciting the battles against the game's big bads are, and I would know because I fought and beat all of them. Grime 2 is one of the few games where there wasn't a single boss that felt redundant or boring, with each one of the villains I got to duke it out with here functioning as tactical puzzles that I had to solve, and once I'd gotten them figured out, victory over them felt like a true achievement. The vast majority of them made me feel true despair when going up against them for the first time, but each defeat led to more knowledge of their movesets until eventually I could nearly go hitless by the time I finally defeated them. These bosses are the epitome of tough but fair, and there is a significant amount of them lurking about the world, including several optional ones, so there's lots of cool fights to experience here. On to difficulty, Grime 2 easily situates itself on the incredibly challenging side of things, mostly on account of the aforementioned big bads, most of whom will definitely give you a run for your money before you learn their movesets. There are also some incredibly tricky platforming sections during the final third of the game, so that's also a factor. On that note, do keep in mind that the title offers two difficulty options, namely Standard, which is the default difficulty and the one I played in, as well as Story, which allows you to modify damage to your tastes, thus making this appealing to both hardcore and casual gamers. As for length, it took me 30 hours to complete Grime 2 with about 95% completion rate and every single boss defeated, with an estimated additional 2 to 4 hours for 100% depending on player skill and observation levels. For a price of about $30, this is an absolute steal for both the amount as well as the quality of content on offer. The game also features Rebind-able Controls for both controller as well as keyboard and mouse, so feel free to customize them in a way that suits you. In conclusion, I had an absolute blast conquering the beast that is Grime 2. I loved its world building, lore and narrative, I adored its multi-layered and challenging combat, I fully vibed with its platforming gauntlets, I thoroughly enjoyed exploration and found the boss fights to be some of the best in the genre. There were some minor hitbox nuisances as well as the awkwardness of the slide down ability when it came to some of the platforming trials, and I do feel like the inclusion of an automatic way of marking down collectibles on the map will alleviate headaches when going for 100%, but these are just nitpicks in the grand scheme of things. All in all, Grime 2 is a fantastic experience that stands tall next to the genre's best, and further proves that 2026 will most likely end up being the best year ever for Metroidvanias. My final verdict on Grime 2 is 9.5 out of 10. What did you think about Grime 2? Have you played it yet? Do you agree with the points I mentioned, or do you see things differently? Let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, Soulsborne Seeker out.